Welcome to Innovating Education. I'm your host, Dr. Riley Williams, and in every episode, we engage with forward thinking educators and changemakers who are reimagining education through innovative practices and fresh perspectives. Our mission is to inspire meaningful, actionable change by sharing strategies that drive positive outcomes for students, teachers, administrators, and communities alike. Today's guest is Justyna Bronski, a certified teen life coach and an experienced instructional leader with a deep commitment to student well-being and personal growth. With over a decade of experience in education, Justyna has dedicated her career to creating nurturing environments where students feel empowered to build confidence, develop meaningful relationships, and enhance communication skills. As the founder of Justyna Bronski Coaching LLC, she partners with parents to support teenagers through life's challenges, helping them cultivate resilience and self assurance. Her work is rooted in mindfulness, emotional intelligence, and a genuine passion for helping young people reach their full potential. We are thrilled to have her with us today to share her insights on fostering student confidence and well being in and out of the classroom. Justyna, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here with you today.
Well, as we dive into today's conversation, we're going to be exploring topics such as how schools can foster authenticity and confidence in students, especially those who might be quietly struggling with shyness, perfectionism, or people pleasing tendencies, the power of emotional intelligence in education, and how educators can connect with teens. But first, Justyna, can you share a bit about your journey up to now?
Of course. So, my journey started in the classroom. First, for a couple of years, it was a middle school setting. And then I was really curious about high school level. So, I decided to jump into that space. And I really felt that's just for me. I really felt fulfillment in that setting. I really loved that period of your life when you are trying to figure out who you are and you are being so authentic and there is such a richness in you. I felt this is a really beautiful match. And I quickly realized that I was working as a high school math teacher. I really quickly realized that my students really need something more than just academic support, that this is important piece, but in order for this to happen, there is many other things that I need to create in the classroom, in my space, in order for them to grow. And one of these things is definitely emotional support, the permission to be imperfect, and also ability to be authentic. So this is when I started getting curious into that area, mindfulness, personal development. And I also have my own personal journey, and I feel like this is a very important piece in terms of how successful I am in what I do, because right now I'm a certified life coach for teens. And what really makes me successful is the fact that I went through this journey on my own. And I feel like you can take really your clients farther that you have gone. So having that experience and knowing all the different pieces of it really make it like extremely successful relationship with the teens that I create right now. And this is what I'm doing. I'm helping them with creating self awareness, with helping them manage their emotions, with building really strong self image. And at the end, creating meaningful relationship with others. But of course, everything starts with the relationship with yourself. So that's definitely the beginning, the root. And I'm also helping parents to navigate the difficult times that their teens are going through, especially that for parents there's a lot of things that show up in that journey triggering their emotions, their feelings, and also supporting educators, because as I said, our teens need much more than just academic support. So just having that awareness and really having skills to help them to go through that journey, I believe is very powerful.
So let's talk a little bit about fostering authenticity and confidence in students. Just from your experience, what are some of the less obvious ways social anxiety, perfectionism, and people pleasing tendencies show up in the classroom?
So this is what I noticed. There is a group of students that we tend to think of them as good students, right? They have this perception that they always follow rules, that they always perform very well, and they really collaborate with others. But behind that, there is something else. There is another level. So here are the people pleasers. People pleasers kind of navigate their world through kind of satisfying, like their worth it's tied to basically making other people happy. So sometimes students who are really always willing to help, always showing up for others, they really don't come from the place of confidence. They come from the place of fear. And that's the kind of like a fear of being abandoned. And this is really just the mechanism that they use in order to navigate everything that is happening. Same with perfectionists. Perfectionists, they really tie their word to achievement. So they're really scared of failure. And what shows up for them, it's really procrastinating. We look at these students, wow, this assignment is so amazing. I did so many drafts of the same assignment. And again, that could be, you could look at this as something positive and really like the students really motivated, but it could come from the place of fear of failure and not being good enough. So these things are not obvious in the classroom. We don't see these things, but it's extremely important for teachers to really understand that besides the outside behavior, there is a lot of stuff going on for each student internally. And the more we are aware of different things, the more successful we are as educators. And I want to also add another thing to it, that all our behaviors are driven by our emotions, and our emotions are really created by the thoughts that we have. So when we look at specific behavior of a student, it's not really enough to kind of just say what it is, because there could be different ways that the student is thinking about specific behavior. And this is exactly where we want to get deeper into, so we are able to get to the cause root of the behavior. It's kind of like, I was working as a high school math teacher. So when you have multiple choice question, there are distractors, right? And if we want to do a reteach on specific concepts in math, we group students based on the distractors, because every distractor, it's a different misconception about specific problems. So that each group needs to be addressed in a completely different way. So I think what we as educators need to do with our students to really dig a little bit deeper into what are the motivations, what are the beliefs, the thoughts in our students. And that's when we actually see the full picture of the situation, not just the surface level of it.
I feel like you described me to a T in the people pleasing and perfectionism. And then you gave me just a little bit more insight into the motivations behind that. So, wow, I'm feeling exposed right now. Um, what do you think that teachers and parents often misunderstand about these types of behaviors?
So that's exactly what I was saying earlier, the actual motivation. Like we look at these students and we say, oh, these students are just fine. They don't really need much help. They are doing extremely well. But just that awareness of like how much anxiety, how much self-doubt, and how much like emotional overwhelm there is happening inside of these students, because these are the things that you don't see, but they are there, they're happening, they're realities for the students. And I feel like we need to be willing to really get curious about where each student is coming from in order to be able to really serve them in a better way.
So, what teacher behaviors or communication strategies have you found most effective in helping students feel safe enough to express themselves authentically?
So, you know what? Like, my background is education and coaching skills. And I really truly believe that all the coaching skills that I have learned are extremely powerful. Like, I feel like if they were just part of teachers' education, we could be so much more successful, because these things are really simple. Well, they are easy but not simple to implement, because it's not really about using very specific skills. It's really about creating something meaningful, which is that space where students feel seen, heard, and valued. And that takes a lot of different components to it. And there needs to be consistency, there needs to be really clear boundaries of what is expected, because sometimes we think that students feel emotionally safe if things things are soft. It's not about softness, it's about really a clarity. And you can have really high standards, but still create environment when students feel emotionally saved. And also, I feel like we as teachers, we need to bring vulnerability to our classrooms, really showing up as human being and sharing the message that imperfections are perfect. We all have them. And we tend to bring so much pressure to students to being certain way, to behave certain way, or like achieving specific goals. But in reality, what makes us beautiful are these imperfections. Also, another thing that I want to add to it is the relationship with failure. I feel like as education system we really didn't get it right. When I started my entrepreneurial journey, I really was able to open up myself to this journey with failure, when I actually was, because I used to be people pleaser, I used to be perfectionism, and I fear mistakes so much, and a lot of times I haven't done many things in my life because of that fear. But that fear is created by me, and also but by social pressure. So just really having this relationship with mistakes, that they are so necessary, that making a mistakes brings so much goodness to our life. Because if we try to work on something the second time, we are in completely different space. We already know what didn't work, and we already went through that experience. We know, we have awareness of all the feelings that go through us during that journey. So just changing that as a part of curriculum in education system, I think that would be a huge benefit, because then students would be able to really show up as themselves without that fear of, being judged for making a mistake.
In that, I really appreciated that you suggested that teachers find a balance between encouraging high standards and also providing the emotional support for our perfectionists, our people pleasers, to help build that confidence without a fear of making mistakes. And
Absolutely.
I think one of the hard things, at least in academia, is and even in math, is you have to find the right answer, right? That's the objective. And then we grade these students based on how many right answers can you get. And that's why they're graded in such a way of they're going to get an A, a B, a C, or they're going to fail. So is there a way that we can change that culture either through formative assessments? How would you recommend that we work on that?
Absolutely. Like that was my common practice in math classroom. One thing, really, peer collaboration, working together on specific problems, right? And then what was happening in my classroom, I noticed that each group approached the same problem in a completely different way. And that piece, when you ask each group to share their approaches to specific problem, was so powerful, because that really showed that it's not really about the right answer and the one way of doing things. It's about using your potential and how you think about this word problem, and coming up with your own solution. So at the end, student were seeing 7 different ways of getting to the same solution, and I think that was powerful. There was a ownership, because students were presenting the solutions, other students seeing that I can actually trust myself, because I saw this students was doing it that way and I want to kind of follow it. But then I actually can trust myself, I have another idea and it actually may work for me as well. I feel like that's really powerful, and working in groups when they actually share their ideas, even if they don't know really at the beginning where you start, because that's a lot of times when you deal with the problems, you don't have solution right away. Some students have this misconception that you need to know the answer just by looking at the problem. No, it's a process that you go through, and when you work with other students, each student will bring something that will create kind of the next step of finding the solution. So there is also a power in teamwork when each of us brings something valuable to the table, so the students at the end feel very empowered. Also, I feel like it's extremely important to reflect in classrooms, and even in classroom like math classroom, when we don't do a lot of writing, I feel like it's so crucial, not really reflecting on specific solutions, but on the process, and also including social emotional learning about how did it make me feel, what showed up for me in this process. Because it's one thing to go through an experience and another thing reflecting on it, because this is the piece that it's extremely important for us to take in order for us to take some to learn some lesson from it and apply it the next time. So taking that time at the end when student can actually do that and even share with others to kind of feel like, oh, I'm not alone in this experience, there are other students who feel exactly the same way. I feel like that's extremely important. It's not about like how many problems you actually solve. Sometimes it could be just one, but really powerful because it's again about the process, not the actual task.
So, what I'm hearing is that collaborative learning activities really help these socially withdrawn or people pleasing students to build greater confidence and through these
Absolutely.
groups, right?
And yes, and there's another piece to it because we have a different level of tolerance when it comes to different things. Like students who are socially withdrawn, they're not going to jump to this role of being a leader of the group right away because it's going to be completely out of their tolerance level. So we need to just remember that this we need to take small steps and expanding that tolerance level for the students to grow. So they need to take right steps, and also kind of trusting the students because they are the ones who really know what it's appropriate for them, so giving them that space for that growth. But also before that, really having that open conversation, like what are we doing here, and having that awareness that this is what it's happening. Because a lot of times when we learn something new, there's this space like not knowing and knowing, and Dr. Becky speaks about it and I love it. And it's about the learning zone, and in the learning zone this is like moving from not knowing to knowing, and it's a very messy and uncomfortable space. And what happens with students and with people in general, we tend to quit because it's really there's a lot of frustration, and each of us has different ability to deal with that frustration. Like how long can I deal with that, right? And what we really want in students, it's not really that specific skill that we are teaching them, but kind of for them to become friend with that frustration, and knowing that this is normal and stick with it as long as they can. So the probability that they will get to that knowing part is greater and will happen for them. So for students to know that this is what happens when we deal with something that is challenging, it really kind of opens the door. Because once you have awareness and you know that this is kind of normal, you don't panic and you don't jump back. You're like, okay, let me see what I can do here and how long can I stay here. We have to stay to the very end, maybe not the first time, right? But I know what it is about, and I'm gonna try as much as I can today, and tomorrow maybe a little bit longer. But I know what I'm working on, and I know that this is something that happens when we learn new things and when we deal with challenging tasks.
That kind of leads me to the role of teachers and providing constructive feedback in ways that are going to build confidence for students rather than amplify their fear of failure.
Exactly. And in order to be able to provide feedback, the one thing that we really need to remember, we gotta build connection with a student, because without connection, feedback is taken very defensively. So what we want student is to be really open to our feedback, and that only happens when they feel connected to us in some way. So really focusing on that first with each student, by it could be done with a lot of different ways. They're usually small things like us remembering their name, us pointing out to something that they did great, us really seeing them when they share something with us and giving them space to really say that. These are the little things that help us at the end give that feedback, and for the student taking it as like, yeah, this is exactly what what I want to do next, and not getting offended about the feedback that we are giving them. So connection, it's a must. You can really connection and feeling emotionally safe with the person, with the teacher.
And connecting with teens, it does require this genuine curiosity, empathy, um, that really resonates with their developmental needs, right? It's a period of exploring their identity. These kids are seeking autonomy, and I feel like they really have a heightened sensitivity to their social dynamics. So,
Absolutely.
educators can bridge this gap by fostering relationships that, as you said, are built on trust, respect, and authentic communication, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, for me, the research suggests that when teens feel seen, heard, and valued, they're more likely to engage academically and socially. So, you were kind of saying strategies like our active listening, our student driven learning outcomes, and then what about incorporating teen related topics into the discussions?
Absolutely, because that's exactly who they are, right? We all love to talk about ourselves, and we kind of have this thing on our forehead, make me feel important. And if you do that to another human being, you will win their heart. And I'm a math teacher, but I'm interested in the whole you. I want to know all about you, and that's when the connection can start, because I'm not showing up here as a math teacher. I'm showing up as a human being, and I'm showing up authentically. That's another piece to it, because we want our teens to be authentic, but a lot of times we struggle with being authentic. And teens sense the energy. This is something that it doesn't happen through conversation. It really is just that energy that you sense, and they know when you are interested in them. So that's why it's like you can't really fake it. It's not like a skill that you can learn. It's really getting deeper into yourself, because if you're really truly connected to yourself and you really like take that time to really dig deeper about who you are, then you kind of look at other people through different lenses. You are able to see them, because if you don't do it, like a lot of times you can kind of look at other people through your own wounds, and it's hard to form connections when you will feel like that. So authenticity requires that you are authentic with yourself first, and curious about another human being genuinely, because I actually am genuinely curious about who you are and where you're coming from and what you have to say. So just, it's not about doing more in terms of us teachers, but giving more space for them to come with whatever they want to come to us, and feeling that we are really hearing them, we are really seeing them. So many more questions that actual sentences, definitely something that works the best, so they can shine and we are just there holding containers for them.
I love that. I think that reconnecting with teens really means meeting them where they are. And today, this rapidly changing world, right? And I've been out of high school, what is it, 15 years now? I have this hard time connecting and really understanding what these teens are going through because as a millennial, we didn't grow up starting at 3 years old, having tablets in our hand, being totally connected to this internet. And so, in today's rapidly changing world, how can we connect with students that generationally are so much different than us?
So on one hand, like, yes, they are going through different challenges. Yes, they have completely different experience, and we may not fully understand because we haven't gone through that, right? But I really go always deeper, because as human beings we have the same needs, and all we really want is feeling connected with other human beings. And what they are doing is just doing it in a completely different way, but focusing on really needs of, they needs what they really need, like you said, feeling seen, feeling heard, feeling value, and being able to create authentic connections. If we focus on that, there's a always way, because with interactions with them, they will be speaking about it, but then when you go deeper, it always comes back to the same things. So even though they experience it's completely different, internally they really go through the same experiences as we do. So there is the possibility to create this connection despite of different outside realities, because internally we all the same and we all want the same thing from other human beings.
I think as educators right now, we're hearing this new buzzword, right? Social emotional learning. And we're trying to implement these into our schools because we do know that the research suggests that these are vital life skills that we need to be preparing students to do. Creating self-awareness, creating empathy, working on our conflict resolution skills. What SEL initiatives should we be looking towards as educators and how can we implement those?
So it depends on what level, right? Like, is it in my classroom? Is it a school wide level? The one thing I want to say, it's not really about choosing the right program, because there's so many of them and a lot of them are powerful, but how things are implemented. I think that we really need to make sure that people who are implementing programs are really prepared for this. Like, they need to go through the experience on their own to kind of get a sense of what it is, right? We need to also identify teachers who are really passionate about it so they can serve as advocates of social emotional learning in school, so it comes from the right place. Because if you just kind of, if I'm a teacher and I feel like this is a waste of time and someone comes to me to deliver that, this is a waste of time. It's not like a lesson that you deliver and let's move on with our lives. Social emotional learning, it's really creating environment, creating the space, culture in school that everybody lives with, like everybody kind of breathes. And it doesn't happen right away. You don't change culture right away. It has to start with very small steps. So not really giving a lot of pressure on changing, like bringing transformation to the school. It's more about taking little steps, observing what is happening, looking at the data, look at different surveys of teachers, students, and really taking step by step and checking what works, what doesn't, because every school is also different, right? We want to implement things in a different way. So this is very, it's really about what's right. But I think it's important for administrators to really involve everyone in it, and really spend a lot of time on, like, what is it exactly that we want, what is it exactly that we don't experience in our school. So specific things, and really paying attention of implementing something, checking if there are any results and making decisions. And also consistency, because I notice a lot of times we get excited about something, we try to implement it, and then after a couple of months, like, nobody's using it, teachers don't like it, and we are done. So it's not going to work. It has to be consistent effort and really sticking to something. But that requires, like, someone really believing in that vision, really fighting for that vision, really showing up for that vision. Because then when you have that energy in school, it's contagious. Like, other people get excited as well, they get passionate about it, and then you just get more and more people being on the board. And then after sometimes you realize, like, wow, this is who we actually are, right? It's kind of like, I'm thinking about the gym. Like, at the beginning, you want to have muscles, you're not gonna get that muscle right away after the first time that you go to the gym, right? But you keep in mind what's your goal, and you need to show up. It could be boring, it could be like, oh, I don't want to go there, but you are doing it consistently. And then after sometimes you actually realize two things: that, wow, this is actually working, my muscles are getting bigger, and also, wow, it doesn't require as much effort because this became part of my image. So this is who I am right now. So it's a completely different vibe. It doesn't take as much energy as it does at the beginning. So someone who's like really passionate and really believing in that, like the belief, it's extremely important. I believe that this is good for us, I believe this is going to work, and my belief can translate to other people in the school, and because of that we can become very successful.
So from an administrator's perspective, I'm looking at metrics. What type of metrics can be used to evaluate the effectiveness of the SEL programs?
So definitely like both qualitative and quantitative, right? Students' self-reflections, looking at those, teachers' feedback, observations, some behavior data, like are the things that are changing, the numbers that are changing over a period of time, right? Also academic performance, because it's really there is a huge correlation between the social emotional learning and academic performance, because emotional learning, it's about your mindset. You start doing things differently, you start approaching problems in a completely different way. So at the end, there's academic performance, and I know that from my own experience as a teacher. Like my students were really bringing beautiful results, and I know it wasn't about me really having the best resources. Like, yes, I was very dedicated teacher who always looked for different things, but I also invested a lot of energy into really making sure that my students feel safe in my classroom, that my students started the year with like a hate math and ending the year with saying like, wow, my math is actually pretty cool. So working on the mindset along with the actual skills in math, like the two together, very powerful. Looking at attendance, engagement, what else, even parents feedback, right? So trying to figure out, gather as much data as we possibly can before the implementing specific program and after, and seeing if there are any results. If there are no results, thinking about what could be possible reasons or like what else could be done. So it's a process. It takes time, and it's never like one right answer. So yeah, I would say these.
I love that. I mean, that is precise, that's actionable. That is such a valuable aspect that we should consider. In thinking about that, what are the key components that you believe are needed for effective SEO programs?
So, definitely building self awareness. Like, really, students need to really know how the brain works. I feel like I learned this stuff like so late in my life, and I wish I knew this stuff before. Emotional regulation. Like, no matter what you do, emotions will show up, period. We do have emotions, we are born with emotions. What we don't have skills to deal with emotions. That's why you see people like reacting to situations and not being too able to respond. But that's again lack of awareness. Once you have awareness, you start labeling the feelings that are happening inside of you. And how do we process emotions? What do we do with them? So there are a lot of different components of that. And then resilience, I feel like it's so important, because resilience is something that sometimes we may think that people go through challenges and because of that they are not successful, but that's really not how this works. Like, if you actually go through challenges, there's something in you that can wake up to kind of deal with adversities, and you can actually turn out in such a different way. So I feel like learning resilience is the most important thing, because everybody kind of has a chance to really thrive in their life. So it's a matter of like either thriving using all these different tools that you can learn, or surviving, just kind of living in this fight and flight and using all these mechanisms that we have learned as kids, and there's nothing else that we know, so we continue using them. And that's not when we can thrive as human beings. So just kind of that awareness that there are skills and tools that every single person can learn and move from that state of surviving to thriving. I think it's a powerful idea, and it brings this sense of hope that we all can make it despite of the challenges that we face.
As you were speaking, one of the questions that came up in my mind was when students also exhibit negative behaviors socially, it seems like the first thing that we go to is punitive. How can we reframe that?
Well, so this is everybody has different look into that. I believe that, I don't know, I'm just kind of like looking at myself as human being, right? Like, there's so much goodness in each of us, but because of some experiences, we may start taking actions and decisions. So like I still feel like that goes back to that awareness of understanding yourself, right? Like, this is what I'm doing, but the reason why I'm doing this, it's not because I'm bad, it's because I kind of have these defense mechanisms that I have developed, because as a kid, I didn't have anything else, and that kept me safe. But now that empowerment, that I don't have to use them anymore, I can learn some other things that will serve me better. And just being aware that they exist, that we don't have to count on the strategies, the patterns that we used to use as kids. It's very eye opening that we don't have to continue living the life the way we do. So empowering people and helping them see the greatness in them, I think that's the key to get deeper to individuals.
Justina, this has been such an incredible conversation, and you've given us so much to think about. And I know that our listeners are going to walk away feeling inspired and equipped to find a meaningful change in their classrooms. I always want to end this show with this question: what's one thing that you'd like every educator listening to walk away with today?
the one thing um the one thing I think it's the relationship that you have with yourself. I think I want every teacher to know that the closer you are to yourself, the more you dig deeper into who you are as individual, the more you are able to serve others in the world, because you are able to see them truly by who they are. So my wish for every teacher is to have that space for themselves, giving themselves permission to really find time, energy to look deeper at who they are, and really honoring that whatever shows up, honoring that, and really putting themselves first, because that's when you actually, that's the place when you are able to give, because sometimes we are very drained and we are kind of trying to give, and there's always a force in it. So not feeling that it's selfish to step back and to actually give it to yourself first, take care of yourself first. I think that's the most courageous step that you can take as a parent, as a teacher, as a human being.
Well, before we wrap up, if listeners want to learn more about your work, where's the best place for them to reach out to you?
So I'm on Instagram and I'm also on LinkedIn, but you can also go to my website, justinabronski.com. And there's a lot of information about my work as well.
And I will actually link that in the description page for our listeners. That way you can just click the link and you'll be able to find her information. Thank you again for being here, Justina. It's been a pleasure having you on the program. And to all of our listeners, if you found value in today's conversation, please consider subscribing, sharing this episode, and leaving a review. Every conversation like this brings us one step closer to transforming education for the better. So until next time, keep learning, keep pushing boundaries, and keep innovating education. Take care.
Thank you.